Okay, so once again, welcome to the 2026 Open for Student Success Symposium. My name is Charlene Martoni, and it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished keynote speaker for this year. Our keynote speaker is named Josh Bolick, who is the head of the David Schulenberg Office of Scholarly Communication and Copyright at the University of Kansas. With Maria Bond and Will Cross, Bolick co-edited Scholarly Communication Librarianship and Open Knowledge and co-founded the Scholarly Communication Notebook. A former presenter for the Open Education Network and OER Research Fellow, he advocates for open access, authors' rights, open education, and issues related, and is interested in OER as a vehicle for expanding scholarly communication knowledge and expertise. From 2016 to 2022, he led open education programs at KU and remains engaged in open education advocacy in a variety of ways. He is published in the Journal of Librarianship and Scholarly Communication, the Journal of Copyright in Education and Librarianship, Peer J, and PLOS Biology, as well as other venues. Bolick holds a bachelor's degree from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and a master's degree in library and information sciences from Florida State University. And in his free time, he enjoys cycling, horror, and culinary adventures, especially tacos and barbecue, which I agree. So thank you, Josh. Welcome, and please take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Charlene. And it's good to see everyone here. Really quickly in the chat, I'm going to drop a link to my slides. There's also this short link is going to be, why don't I advance? So here's my slides are openly licensed, but this is my title slide. This short link is here. It's also on the last slide. So feel free to access these now or later. I know they're going to be shared out. Along with the recording. And that's the last time that I'm going to be able to monitor the chat until we get to the Q&A, because I just find it impossible to speak and pay attention to that. And I'm actually going to kill my video as well, just because you don't need to watch me wildly gesticulate and nervously sort of bounce back and forth and dance. So I think that will Jason and others in the chat pointed out that my laser background photograph, which is getting a little long in the tooth now, but a lot of people find it charming. So I think like maybe this is more fun to look at than me, and that will enable you to focus on my slides. Thanks to Charlene and everyone involved in planning and supporting this event. And congratulations to GSU Libraries and the students and everyone involved in the information that Anjaya, I believe, just shared. I've been aware of Affordable Learning Georgia for 10 or so years, which is about as long as I've been a member of the open education community. Jeff Gallant, who's the head of that organization, is extremely visible and available and collaborative and supportive and friendly and all of those things. And so it's been a while since I've seen Jeff, but I've always appreciated his contributions to the landscape. And so I think if you're a member of that landscape already, you probably know Jeff and the good work that's been happening across Georgia, both within ALG institutions as well as other institutions. And I'm from North Carolina originally. That's how I ended up at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington on the coast. And so it's good to be virtually back with you in the South. It really is my honor and privilege to speak with you all. These slides do have notes and links. A lot of the images are linked to wherever they came from. And so if there's something here that you want to pursue further, please refer to the slides or feel free to get in touch with me. Advance my slides. I think Charlene just did a really good job of sort of introducing me. So I'm going to skip past this, with the exception of my cat, because there are a lot of librarians here, and like in my experience, librarians and also non-librarians love cats. So this is our 7-year-old cat, Ruth. She is named Ruth because of her descent collar, but mostly what she descends to is waiting for mealtime, and anytime my wife, who handles mealtime, leaves our house. Um, the cycling is my main proxy for being outside. Um, and I think that's sufficient for additional sort of personal information. And then I don't, yeah, Charlene covered this in the intro as well. Thing I think I would add is just that the Open Education Network and Spark, which is the Scholarly Publishing and Academic Resources Coalition, have both been huge aspects of the entirety of my career. Like they've provided really important communities and resources and support and collaboration. And I would not have the career that I have or be the person that I am at this point. And then the last thing that I wanted to share is just that I'm very aware that I've enjoyed and benefited from a really incredible network of peers and collaborators and mentors, and none of this happened without them. Like I stand on the shoulders of giants, so I'm grateful to them, and I hope to pay that support forward. For the remainder of my career and life. And then the other thing is that I'm full of doubt and the sense of being an imposter. And even now, like as in right now, I wonder if I really have anything important to share with you. I bet there are people watching this talk that could be giving it instead, possibly doing a better job at that. So, like I wonder, like, why do I have this opportunity? Do I deserve this, or am I just lucky, or some mixture of the two? So throughout this talk, I hope you'll see that like my gratitude, vulnerability, and sincere desire to highlight the work of others, because we can't do this alone and we can't go about it without sincerity. Speaking of vulnerability, we are living through a difficult time. Certainly working in higher ed right now seems to be more challenging than any other time, at least in my experience, and I personally feel that. I frequently am awake at 3 a.m. staring at my ceiling in the dark and wondering about things both profound and mundane. This is Egg, the young squire to Duncan the Tall in the HBO series A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is set in the Game of Thrones universe. In pondering the meaning of a song that's too bawdy to repeat here, he makes this simple observation that hope belongs to all who invoke it. And I found that both poignant and appropriate to this moment, because in order to show up for this work with hope, we have to take care of ourselves. And that will, I'll say a little bit more about that at the end. Corresponding with my experience, sort of straddling the open access advocacy and scholarly publishing work in libraries and open education work, you'll see that I have as much to say about open access as I do about open education. And in my experience, many of the folks who work in one of these other areas also works in the other. They're related in ethos if they differ in particulars. Because open access works become OER when they're applied as teaching and learning content, the more open access works, the more potential OER exists. So open access, or OA, refers to scholarly literature that is digital, online, free of charge, and free of most copyright and reuse restrictions. And open educational resources, or OER, are teaching, learning, and research materials that reside in the public domain or have been released under an intellectual property license that permits their free use and repurposing by others. Distinguishing between these related areas is helpful in the sense of being precise in our language, and also because they have different focal points. OA is concerned with scholarly literature. OER is concerned with teaching and learning content. Sometimes they overlap. There's a Venn diagram there. And I don't know of a better resource explaining that than this resource at the bottom called Differentiating Between Open Access and Open Educational Resources by Anita Walls at Virginia Tech. I ended up skipping the slide that has that resource on it, but it is still in the deck. So if you access the deck, there's a link to that and a little more information about it. There's a part of discourse in the last few years that suggests that openness has failed, that because aspirational goals that were articulated in 2001 by the Budapest Open Access Initiative, which is 4 years before YouTube launched and 6 years before the release of the first iPhone, because those goals haven't been universally achieved, because tactics and strategies have evolved, that we failed. And I think that we can get in our own heads about that as well. It can be hard to perceive change at a local level, or we might look at and examine exemplary peer program and think our own initiatives compare poorly, though I'd be willing to bet that the colleagues who lead those programs may feel similarly, or at least they're aware of all the wrinkles in their own initiatives. So like I want to kind of interrogate this. Have we failed? And I think the best way to do that is to look at some of the data about the growth of OA and OER. This graph depicts the number of open repositories over time by annual count that's the bars, and cumulative totals, which is the red line, from 2000 to 2025. During this period, the number of open repositories increased from near zero to nearly 6,000 open repositories, and that data is from the Registry of Open Repositories. As a case study in the growth of repository contents and their use, this graph depicts the number of articles available. That's the blue upper line in the NIH public access repository called PubMed Central, and the average number of unique sessions per weekday. That's the pink lower line by fiscal year from 2013 to 2024. So in 2013, there were nearly 3 million articles viewed an average of 834,000, viewed by an average of 834,000 unique users per weekday. And in 2024, that increased to over 10 million items and 4.4 million unique users per weekday. But, you know, being one of the largest repositories in the world, maybe PubMed Central isn't representative or is special. So this is KU ScholarWorks, which is the institutional repository of the University of Kansas. This actually uses the same repository software that Georgia State does for also called ScholarWorks, your institutional repository. KU ScholarWorks was established in 2005. By 2014, it contained 12,325 items that were downloaded 1.6 million times. And in 2024, a decade later, it contained, excuse me, over 29,000 items that saw 2.6 million downloads. So that's an increase of 137% for items and over 62% for downloads. This is a graph by the Registry of Open Access Repositories Mandatory Archiving Policies, or BORMAP, that depicts the growth of open access policies by research organizations and funders from 2005 to 2025. What you can see here is that while funders and the subunits of research organizations, those are the greens and the darker blue, have grown relatively slowly, the number of research organizations with OA archiving policies, KU was among them, grew substantially between about 2008 and about 2020, and has continued to grow incrementally since. These policies require and/or empower researchers to share their articles openly through repositories. The number of OA journals indexed in the Directory of Open Access Journals more than doubled between 2014 and present, from about 10,000 journals in 2014 to over 22,000 now, and most of those journals don't charge an article processing charge, or APC. The volume of openly published articles has grown, both overall and as a proportion of all articles. These graphs from the STM Association show the volume of articles, reviews, and conference papers by access type on the left, with gold OA, which is not necessarily APC funded OA, increasing from 400,000 to about 1.6 million between 2014 and 2024. And then on the right, as a percent of the whole, from 14% in 2014 to 40% gold in 2024. While the volume and proportion of green and bronze OA, so that's green is archiving OA and bronze are non-openly licensed works that just appear on the publisher site. So while that proportion has been flat to declining, they still contribute to the growth of OA overall, towards roughly half of all articles, reviews, and conference papers. STM notes that the uptick in the subscriptions only publications likely reflects the increase in publishing from China and India, where uptake of OA has been slower. And I think that reflects less APC and transformative agreement access and strong incentives to still publish in quote unquote high impact factor journals. Funders have been in this game actually for quite a long time. In the US, funders have been engaged in supporting public access, which is what they call their repository-based policies since 2005, when the National Institutes of Health began requesting deposit of funded manuscripts in PubMed Central. In 2008, that became mandatory. In 2013, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy directed about 15 other federal funding agencies to develop and implement similar plans. And in 2022, again, directed agencies to update those plans to remove the previously permitted 12-month embargoes, so requiring immediate public access upon publication, expanding to more federal funding agencies, and they require data sharing upon publication as well. Most of these policies went into effect on January 1st of 2026, just a couple months ago, I guess 3 months ago. Well, yeah, a couple months ago. Some of them went into effect earlier. NIH went into effect July 1st. Department of Energy and a few others went into effect in October 2024. But these are going to lead to a lot more openly available articles and data in the next several years and beyond. And if you're a PI and this is news to you, you should probably look into that. And Charlene, or any of your, if you're at GSU, any of your GSU Libraries colleagues can help you get to the right person. I think it's Laura Bertle, who I've been aware of for a long time through scholarly publishing and open access advocacy community. So that's something to know about, because this is a pretty significant shift in how funders are requiring public access to funded research. In the EU, in 2018, a collective of research funders, mostly in the EU, there's some broader representation than EU, but they formed this organization called Coalition S and began requiring open access to funded research, immediate open access to funded research outputs. But that mostly has happened through article processing charges and open publishing agreements. And by 2023, they realized the unintended consequences of codifying those models, because they led to increased cost and excluded researchers who can't pay or who aren't at institutions that can afford access to those types of agreements. And so they released this report called Towards Responsible Publishing, in which they articulate a vision, a set of principles, and a mission towards scholar-led publishing. And just this past November, in 2025, they released an updated strategy for the next 4 years that proposes to advance models like publish, review, curate, Diamond OA, and preprint sharing, with the effort being to sort of return control back to the academy. A lot of this scholarly activity is focused on articles, but books are also a part of the mix. So STM on the right shows the steady growth of openly published books indexed in the directory of OA books, more than tripling from 2014 and 2024. There are nonprofit advocacy groups like the Open Book Collective, and even pretty traditional players like JSTOR are developing publishing programs to support open book publishing. So the JSTOR program is called Path to Open. It has about 50 university presses that participate, and they identify a selection of their new books to open after a 3-year period from the date of publication. And they do this through library support. So participating libraries benefit by providing licensed access to the backlist and new titles, both those that will be opened and those that will not, and get to sort of support open publishing models. So that's one model. There's a bunch of experimentation happening to find mutually beneficial models. So that's a space to sort of pay attention to if that's interesting to you. Shifting gears from the sort of open access to scholarly publishing works towards the volume or to OER. Let's consider the growth of OER materials. So like as a proxy for the growth of OER, we might consider the growth of the Open Textbook Library, which is supported by the Open Education Network. This graph from the OEN shows the growth of the Open Textbook Library from about 600 open textbooks in October 2018 to roughly 1,700 or so late this past year. And that continues to grow. So I became aware of the Open Textbook Library in about 2015, and I think I can't prove this, but I remember think that there were somewhere around 250 books when I just first started paying attention. And every time I look, more books have been added. So like a month ago, I have a screen grab for a different presentation that I gave at KU that that number was 1,777. And I got this screen grab last Thursday morning as I was working on these slides, and it's up to 1,787. I checked again this morning and it's still at that, but I'm sure there will be additional books added soon. Um, the books in the open textbook library have been reviewed almost 7,500 times by faculty with disciplinary credentials, and the vast majority of those reviews trend very positively from 4.0 or greater on a 5-star scale. These reviews are visible alongside the books, completely unedited by the OEN staff. They're posted as they're submitted. They bear the name, title, and institution of reviewers, so instructors who are considering a book can assess who the review is by and verify their qualifications and sort of situate their review in their credentials. Faculty awareness of OER on the left and use of OER on the right have trended towards or trended upwards over the last decade, as demonstrated by Julia and Jeff Seaman of Bayview Analytics, who are giving a presentation here in about an hour and a half, I think. Julie and Jeff, if you're already here, thank you for your work. You can see that there's a slight decrease in awareness from 22-23 to 23-24, but some recovery in 24-25, and a similar pattern occurs in use, but more than recovered, rising to a third of faculty reporting use of OER in that year, at least among those surveyed. Many institutions across the higher ed spectrum, from community colleges to the most elite public and private institutions, are engaging in open education advocacy and support. So here I'm using another Open Education Network resource, a recent member map as a proxy, demonstrating institutional engagement across the US and extending into Canada. According to the OEN, 1,793 institutions, consortia, and regional systems, which is a significant portion of US higher ed, are represented here. And of course, there are also institutions that have robust engagement outside of OEN membership. So this is an indicator, but it's not the full picture. There are more roles in libraries dedicated to open education and open access. My colleague Amanda Larson from from Ohio State University has collected dozens of these. I counted about 75 of these position descriptions. This is just a small sample that are visible on the screen here, but there's a link there to a Google Drive folder where about I think 8 or 9 years of positions is collected. And then there are many more people who don't have dedicated roles, but who do this work off the side of their desks in addition to core responsibilities rather than through a dedicated role. And that might fit a lot of you who are here. There are tons of professional development opportunities, from formal certificates and programs to regularly recurring community calls. These are opportunities for folks to develop new skills and programs, often in cohort settings, to share ideas and lessons learned and to expand community. There's a growing body of research about OER. Virginia Clinton Lozelle was one of the keynote speakers of this event last year. She was actually at KU about a week after that to give a talk about the research landscape. She's the principal investigator and organizer of the Open Education Group, which has developed research frameworks, cultivated research skills, and supported the development of a robust body of peer-reviewed literature about the cost, outcomes, use, and perception of OER. I counted 61 articles by Open Ed Group researchers since 2006 and 189 articles by 216 OER research fellows since 2015. That's nearly 300 articles produced by this group and its affiliates alone. And there's also a robust body of research about the growth of open access, the impact of article processing charges, the OA citation advantage, and other aspects of OA. If you're interested in contributing to that body of research or sitting on a project and looking for a journal, this call for papers from the Journal of Open Educational Resources in Higher Education, which is published by Iowa State University Digital Press, which is based in the libraries at ISU, just went out on Monday. So this is a no-cost, Diamond Open Access journal. I saw this coming through my inbox on Monday and threw this in case anyone is looking for an opportunity. Finally, there are tons of conferences, both large and small, virtual and in person, and many of them, like this one, are free. These are opportunities to share ideas, engage with peers, to build community, to learn and critique. And it's amazing to see these conferences grow from a couple dozen people. I'm thinking of the OEN Summer Institute in around 2016 or so. Was it like in a pretty small room, and then just a few years later was had grown uh, several times that. Like we needed bigger spaces over those few years before the pandemic. And then, like, I think the first open education conference I went to was in Vancouver in 2015. It felt like there were a couple or a few hundred people there. And when I attended the same conference, I think in 2019 in Niagara Falls, it felt like there were 1,000 or more people there. So it just like I observed the growth of this landscape firsthand in a relatively short period of time, and I think it's continued to grow since then. Um, I didn't link all of these to their source, but there's a link there at the bottom of the slide of just a conference list that someone is maintaining the OpenEd group or opened.org among the resources that they provide. So that's a great resource. So there's a lot of growth and normalization of these practices. However, the path towards any goal is rarely linear and consistently progressive. There are starts and stops and gaps and plateaus and so on. So for example, the awareness of OER dipped over the last few years. Inclusive access has gained steam. Some publishers are engaged in data collection practices that are deeply concerning with regard to privacy and surveillance. There are some signs that maybe open access growth is slowing and so on. I'm sure we can add additional examples to that. The point is, it's not all rainbows and puppies, and I don't think this is particularly surprising. A lot of the growth of open access has been driven by article processing charges or so-called transformative agreements. So here on the left, you see, excuse me, the gold and hybrid APC revenue of the big five scholarly publishers being Elsevier, Sage, Springer Nature, Taylor Francis, and Wiley from 2015 to 2018, and it grows each year for each publisher. On the right, again, from the STM Association, you see the growth of transformative agreements from 2014 to 2024. And while these articles result in the publication of many open articles, the methods through which they do that create authorship barriers. They fail to lower costs. They have an increased complexity and institutional staff needs. And I feel that directly because my institution has a number of open access agreements, including with some of these publishers. And I have complicated feelings about that, which we can talk about in the Q&A if you'd like to. A significant facet of the reason that we support these areas is to empower researchers and instructors to leverage greater control over their choices and their works. I don't want to take them out of one box where they have to publish in high impact factor journals or perish or serve expensive all rights reserved teaching content only to put them in another restrictive box. We should be focused on winning hearts and minds and not shame or coercion. I don't think that we're trying to achieve universal open access to all scholarly literature and data or the adoption of OER in every course at every institution. Those aren't realistic goals, and advocating for that or advocating without nuance actually does harm to these efforts by alienating potential allies and failing to recognize disparate levels of opportunity and the autonomy of researchers and instructors. It's basically impossible to teach some courses, like contemporary fiction, for example, and not assign closed works. And yet, I think we all want students to have the opportunity to choose to take those courses. We also owe our colleagues who teach those courses respect, which means acknowledging that they know better how to teach their courses than we do. So I think this is the nuanced and flexible way, as open as possible, as closed as necessary. It's derived from the FAIR principles for data sharing, where the A stands for accessible. And the goal here is to set the default to open, but recognize that there are reasons why open may not be appropriate or possible. There are some bad reasons that researchers and instructors choose not to openly share their works or to adopt or create OER, but there are also some good reasons that they make these choices, or at least understandable reasons. And we can advocate and educate and complicate, but we shouldn't coerce. I think you can see that these are robust, thriving communities and landscapes, and there's a lot of opportunity and support available to those who want it. But it can sometimes feel like nothing has changed or that change moves at a glacial pace. But these are significant changes. So to say that this is what failure looks like, I think is myopic and reductive. Um, and this growth and the problems it solves, the money it saves students, the benefits of expanded access to research, headaches and all, I think is quite remarkable. I've talked a little bit about challenges like APCs and transformative agreements. I suspect everyone here is familiar with at least some of these additional challenges. Some folks aren't sure of the quality of open journals and OER. I would actually argue that that's a good and healthy thing. Um, they may have questions about sustainability. We know that there are awareness gaps. There's a lack of ancillary content for a lot of OER. There are market manipulations. There are capacity issues, and it's hard to overcome inertia to stop doing something the way we've been doing it and do it another way instead. And we've developed ways of dealing with a lot of these challenges. We share ways to evaluate quality. We explore the development of sustainable models. We create new journals and OER to fill gaps. We pursue outreach programs and provide financial incentives and so on. But there are some new challenges too. How to leverage or resist AI or just to coexist with it, how to deal with bad actors, both real and artificial, in the scholarly record, how to navigate the intense and varied political attacks on higher ed, things like threats to tenure, to academic freedom, or to the ability of a student or instructor to use a bathroom that aligns with their gender identity, and so on. The thing that I've been thinking about is it seems like many people that I talk to, lots of colleagues in and beyond my own institution, are feeling anxious, and I, I think that that's a rational response to what's happening around us, and these things interrupt and make it harder to do our work, and many of us are feeling that. So, what do we do? Um, I think incentives are the linchpin of many of our challenges because incentives shape behavior. That's rational. We perform within incentive structures. And our incentive structures are often based on measures like citation counts and impact factors and so on. So I see measures and incentives as intertwined. I'm indebted to Mike Doherty, who's the chair of the Department of Psychology at the University of Maryland, for helping to shape my understanding here. Mike gave a talk at KU last October called Aligning Incentives with Institutional Values, Reforming Faculty Evaluation to Promote and Reward Scholarship for the Public Good. His slides and a recording are both available in KU ScholarWorks, linked on the slide, and I think they're worth viewing. So Mike worked with his departmental colleagues to update their hiring, promotion, and tenure and evaluation guidelines through supporting open practices. Through his presentation, I learned about Goodhart's law, that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So in other words, once faculty or students know how they're being measured, they're likely to focus on achieving that measure, even if it distorts their original purpose. They'll game the system towards succeeding within it, whether intentionally or not. So how can we recognize that they will game it in order to support good outcomes rather than bad ones, so that all that effort that is channeled towards solving problems and empowering them to succeed in ways that serve the greater good? Think how many times you've encountered a barrier that's based in policy. Higher ed is rife with them. Sometimes that's because the policy is bad, and yet rather than change the policy to better serve us, we tend to accept it and serve the policy, and that's not how it's supposed to work. Policy should serve people and not the other way around. So the obstacles to fuller realization and the potential of open access and OER are great examples of how policy serves us poorly, and we need to change the policy. It can be tempting to call these systems dysfunctional. Last year, I was in an Office of Faculty Affairs program called Senior Administrative Fellows, and we read this book called The Practice of Adaptive Leadership by Heifetz, Grashow, and Linsky. And I think everyone in my cohort was struck by this quote. There is no such thing as a dysfunctional organization because every organization is perfectly aligned to achieve the results that it gets. I'll say it one more time. There is no such thing as a dysfunctional organization because every organization is perfectly aligned to achieve the results that it gets. If you replace organization with system, I think you can see the connection. Our current reward system is perfectly aligned to achieve the results that it gets. And if we don't like those results, we need to work together to change the system. This infographic and link from the Scalcom lab summarizes findings based on the review of over 850 review, promotion, and tenure guidelines in the US and Canada. And the basic narrative here is that the demands of faculty work are increasingly complex and fraught. Review, promotion, and tenure guidance shapes the path to success. These documents show how scholarship is rewarded and where there's an opportunity for change. And the focus should be on the quality of individual work, not on journal level metrics. So we need to improve and evolve how research outputs are evaluated to shift the focus from status to values towards recognizing, rewarding, and embedding public scholarship as a foundational criteria for success. There's a lot of activity in this area. The San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment discourages the use of journal level metrics, such as journal impact factor, in favor of article level evaluations of scholarly value and impact. Mike Doherty and his colleagues developed this toolkit for aligning incentives, which is a collection of fact sheets on topics like open science and reproducibility and the incorrect and correct use of bibliometrics in evaluation. Humetrics offers a values-enacted, process-oriented approach to scholarly production, decision-making, and evaluation through initiatives like the Values Enacted Leadership Institute, Modernizing Academic Appointment and Advancement, or MA3, invites institutions to reimagine their evaluation processes by seeking bold, creative strategies to develop reward systems that foster a collaborative, responsive, and transparent research environment. Helios Open, which stands for the Higher Education Leadership Initiative for Open Scholarship, emerged from the work of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine's Roundtable on aligning incentives for open scholarship. It's a cohort of now over 100 colleges and universities committed to collective action to advance open scholarship within and across their campuses to promote a more transparent, inclusive, and trustworthy evaluation system. And finally, valuing OER in the tenure, promotion, and reappointment process by the Doers 3 group. That's an acronym that stands for Driving OER Sustainability for Student Success. It's a collection of case studies about valuing the use and creation of OER in evaluation processes. What all of these projects have in common is that they're values driven. They emphasize agency to work on things we care about, and they de-emphasize reputation-based proxy indicators of quality that are barriers to that agency. This is highly context-specific work. So like what works at one institution may not work at another, or even within an institution, what works in one department may not work in another. So any particular example that I might explore here might be useless to a majority of this audience. So instead, I want to highlight a couple of resources that collect examples that anyone can review and leverage and adapt to their own circumstances. So TARA, or Tools to Advance Research Assessment, is a DORA project to facilitate the development of new policies and practices for assessment. The TARA Reformscape is a searchable database of examples that can be sorted by geographic location, discipline, type of assessment, and population. For example, you could search responsible research assessment policies in the US in research integrity for social sciences specific to promotion for assistant professors, or you can browse more than 200 documents that are indexed there. And then I already mentioned this, but I want to resurface it. So Doherty's toolkit for aligning incentives includes overviews of relevant topics, key points, and resources, including scholarship and examples. And it was developed as a starting point for those who don't know where or how to start. So that's a good first place to look. And then sometimes opportunities just present themselves. If you're a member of the open education community already, you're likely familiar with Abby Elder, who's a librarian at Iowa State University. She's the author of the OER Starter Kit. And just last week, I think she posted on LinkedIn that the Faculty Senate at Iowa State was considering an OER resolution and amendments to the faculty handbook to support the use and creation of OER in promotion and tenure guidance that were subsequently unanimously passed. I reached out to Abby to verify that she was okay with me using this good news in this talk and asked how it came to be. And she responded, it was the absolute serendipity of one of the faculty members on our OER committee being voluntold to serve on the faculty development subcommittee for Faculty Senate this year, and that member wrote up all the documentation and presented it for a vote, and it was subsequently passed unanimously. I've also had the opposite experience where I was working with a friend who's in one of the schools at KU who advanced some language that seemed to be going swell, and then it like so just sort of hit some snags and slow down, and so we're taking a longer approach. So like both of these things can happen. So wrapping up, aside from digging into these collections of examples and educating ourselves, taking actions appropriate to our situations and bringing others along, how do we get from here to where we want to be towards open as a default? I want to pan back and think more broadly about how we do any advocacy work, because all these examples are useless if there aren't people to act on them. At the risk of being trite or maybe merely cheesy, we have to keep showing up, advocating, and caring for each other and caring for ourselves. So I'll kind of treat each of these areas in turn. I think many of us have gotten pretty good at showing up and advocating. That's how the significant evolution towards the normalization of open access and open education I've been describing came to be. We did that by familiarizing ourselves with the issues and opportunities, both local and at the landscape level. We developed networks and allies. We identified next steps and pursued them, and then the next and the next. And by taking small steps, we've played a long game. We iterate forward towards better systems and pivot as needed. And our ability to pivot is based on new information, I think is a strength and not a weakness. We've brought others with us, creating community and strength in numbers. And I think the best place to start is on our own departments or schools, or even how we talk about our work in our own annual evaluations, or if we supervise how we evaluate others. And we need to reject perfection, make mistakes, learn from the process, and model it for others. Now I hope you'll permit me some armchair counseling with the acknowledgement that I'm on the same journey you are, trying to figure myself and the world out. So I'm coming to you as a fellow human and do not claim any superiority here. We're okay, I think, at caring for each other for the most part, but there's plenty of room for improvement. And a lot of the ways that we care for each other are extensions of showing up and advocating. So caring for each other means listening and acknowledging difficulty and challenges. So like after this talk, if you say to me, Josh, I agree and want to participate, but capacity is a huge challenge for me right now, and I tell you that you just need to make the time and figure it out, I'm not really helping, and I'm not nurturing your interest. It would be better if I acknowledged the issue and sympathized, suggested the most accessible action, or just let you know that I'm happy to talk when the circumstances change or an opportunity presents itself. A kind response invites further engagement, and it treats whoever's asking that question like a real person with legitimate concerns rather than a pawn in my pursuit of cultural change. We practice care for each other through empathy, gratitude, appropriate levels of support, what you can give, what they can use, and acts of kindness. And that last one, I think, being kind can be so simple. You can tell someone they did a good job. You can hold the door. You can offer to help. And these acts serve others, but in doing them, we serve ourselves. So I would encourage you to just try this. Do something nice for a stranger without expectation of anything in return. Don't post about it on social media. Don't tell anybody about it, and reflect on how you feel. I find it life affirming, and that has been especially true in the complexity of the last several months or years, however long you want to frame that. Finally, critique is essential and it's part of the academy, but critique to improve rather than to destroy. Be the reviewer or critic that you'd like to have judge your own work. That doesn't mean being falsely supportive or silent towards errors. It means critiquing with their best interests at heart as a gesture of support. Caring for ourselves is where I think most of us struggle, and failing to care for ourselves doesn't serve us, each other, or the work. So I think we have to be honest with ourselves about how we're doing and try to understand why. Some of those strategies that we've been talking about above for caring for ourselves and showing up and advocating also serve caring for ourselves. So give yourself a break. You're just human. acts of kindness and practicing gratitude benefit ourselves as well. There's research that shows that the simple action of keeping a gratitude journal, just a simple gratitude bullet journal, decreases symptoms of anxiety and depression and improves mental health. And if you look in the notes for these slides, you'll find a link to an article in PubMed Central that backs that up. Um, Seek support when you need it, reach out to friends and mentors, and cultivate community. There's an extensive body of research that shows that engagement with nature is beneficial in mental and physiological ways. Spending so much time indoors, sedentary, staring at screens in isolation is poorly aligned with our evolutionary programming. I read a great book by a journalist named Florence Williams called The Nature Fix: Why Nature Makes Us Happier, Healthier, and More Creative. And it's really about the extensive body of research that shows that the effect of exposure to nature is so effective that you can trick your brain by looking at images or videos of natural settings or playing bird sounds or rain sounds through a speaker, of which there are thousands of hours on YouTube alone. That replicates the experience of being outdoors and experiencing those things in real life. It's not as powerful, but it's still pretty powerful. Patio or yard is better than the digital experience if you have one. A park can do, a forest with trails or a view of water is ideal. I think that this book is where I learned a quote that's stuck with me since. Spend an hour outside every day unless you're too busy, in which case spend 2 hours outside. And I don't think that's to be taken literally. I think the point of it is to make time for this kind of thing because you'll see the benefits, notwithstanding smog and mosquitoes. Again, the replication also works. So, and I don't want to pretend that we all have equal access. Go for a long walk. If you can't go for a long walk, go for a short walk. Dance to music you enjoy. Get up from your desk and do some stretches while you're listening to talks today. Cultivate a garden. Go for a bike ride. It really doesn't matter what you do. All movement is good. And again, I've linked to a PubMed Central article that backs that up. You make stuff, anything. I'm not a creative person, but I love to cook, and that's creative. When possible, practice do it yourself or DIY, whether that's fixing something or making something. I can't construct beautiful things, but I can make functional things like the workbench that's in my basement that has drawers and shelves and keeps tools and miscellaneous junk kind of organized. And I built it 10 years ago, and every time I stand in front of it, which is nearly daily, that's super satisfying to me. At the same time, sometimes hiring an expert can be helpful. Like I do not do plumbing. I find it deeply upsetting and frustrating, and I've just learned that it's better to hire an expert. So get the right balance there for yourself, but like try to do some things if that's not a familiar practice. Build time for rest, take naps, read for pleasure, spend a few minutes each day breathing deeply, create the circumstances in which you have the best chance for a good night's sleep as often as possible. And finally, avoid vocational awe, which is a concept developed by a librarian named Fobazi Etter around 2018 in a scholarly article titled Vocational Awe and Librarianship: The Lies We Tell Ourselves, was published in the Library with the Lead Pipe. Vocational awe describes the set of values, ideas, and assumptions that librarians have about themselves and the profession that result in notions that libraries are institutions that are inherently good or sacred and therefore beyond critique. So while this is focused on librarianship, you could sub out other professions with altruistic associations like teaching and nursing both come to mind, and nothing is beyond critique. And we shouldn't hold our professions in such high regard that we exploit ourselves and allow ourselves to be exploited in order to serve them. I am very sorry to say that Miss Etar passed away in January, and that's a real loss for all of us. I can't think of another recent idea that has gained so much positive traction in librarianship in that period of time since that article was published. So yeah, may she rest in peace. By caring for ourselves and caring for each other, we can continue to show up and advocate, and these are the best tools towards creating institutional cultures in which students, researchers, teachers, and librarians all thrive. We are the magic bullet, and it's not magic. It's good old-fashioned persistence, hope, and grit that will get us there. And that is all I have. So thank you for your time and attention. Thanks to Charlene and the good folks who organized and supported this conference and who trusted me with this opportunity and responsibility. I hope it's been worthwhile, and I'm super interested in your comments and questions.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. That was a fantastic keynote speech. Thank you for your overview of the growth of open access and open education, as well as your exploration of the open community's successes and future directions. And especially thank you for your realness and your humility. Thank you. So we
It's
do
it
have.
that's I'll just say like it's sincerely delivered. Like I think yeah, I've seen a lot of keynote speeches, and I always get the impression that like wow, that person seems like they know what they're talking about and what they're doing. And I've done a couple of these now and realized that that's not true. And so like just want to model that.
Very inspirational. Okay, so we have some questions coming in. I'm just going to grab the last one that came in. I've been making a document. Um, I do want to comment on the concept of as open as possible, as closed as necessary. It kind of reminds me of how we think about freedom of information versus national security. It's how much can we share without sharing too much, right? So I just find that very, very intriguing. Okay, so let's ask some of the questions that came into the chat, and then I have a couple of questions if we have time. So our
Mhm.
first question, um, I didn't grab the person's name, but that's okay. We'll keep people's names anonymous anyway in the recording. So the first question is, do you think that generative AI, especially the loss of attribution, is impacting individuals' willingness to author, post, or share OER materials, and maybe even their participation in the open movement overall?
Yeah, I've heard some of that. I mean, I think it's it's hard to have any case in point, right? Like it's hard to have any conversation these days where AI doesn't become a part of it. That's a super reasonable question. I mentioned AI in the presentation, and there's such a sort of disparate understanding of embrace and rejection and coexistence, or just trying to figure it out. I think I'm somewhere in the middle of that. I think that there are real environmental and social and like as we've recently been hearing, like militaristic sort of concerns about these tools. I uh, I I am skeptical towards the idea that they can be put back in a bag. Like I think they're here, and I know that that sounds deterministic, and there's a range of perspectives on that, but I can't think of a technology like this that once it was released went away. They evolve, but so like I think oh, AI is a tool. It can build or destroy, and we need to engage with it thoughtfully and critically. I know that some people have sort of been concerned about, well, does open licensing mean that these companies that I don't like, who are doing things that I don't like, can incorporate my work and benefit from it? And depending, well, I mean, the answer is yes. Um, but the court cases that have been decided in the last year around fair use and AI, there are two of them. One is called Kadri v. Meta, and the other one, uh, what's the other one? Does anybody remember the title? Anthropic. Uh, Maybe that will occur to me in a minute. Both of them, the judge found that training on copyright protected material was a fair use, but took issue in the Anthropic case with the use of pirated. Bart, thank you, Sam. Good to see you from UNCW, my alma mater. Um, so it took issue with the fact that a lot of that training data was pulled from piracy sites. So like LibGen and Sci-Hub and that kind of thing. So the judge called the the training, I think the phrase is it was something like uh, extremely transformative or foundationally transformative or something like that. But that it wasn't okay to use illegally required materials to conduct that training. And then the other one said, yes, it's transformative and thus fair, but left a door open for sort of market dilution, and that as a possible concern for the future for future litigation. So I think the main points here is that it's at least considered in the current case law that training on copyright protected content is likely to be a fair use, not in all circumstances or through all methods, but at least some of the time. So I think what many people have experienced is that their stuff is getting scraped anyway. Like I don't know that I wouldn't have faith that my not open things are not being scraped. Or like researchers have, I think it was Taylor and Francis last August, I think, announced, maybe it was the August before, announced a deal with OpenAI or one of those companies to license all of their book content to the AI company for training their models. And lots of the authors of those books didn't like that. I heard from one at my institution that was like, hey, what can I do about this? And I was like, well, we could look at your publication contract to see, but probably the answer is you can express your dissatisfaction, but you can't actually stop this because you signed a contract that gives them ownership. So this is a long-winded way of saying it's in the mix. I think AI is pretty poorly understood by a lot of folks. So, like the way that I would try, possibly including me, I'm not an expert on AI, but um, I would encourage folks that have that concern to sort of like pan back and consider how they've already agreed to giving away the rights for AI training by not exercising as much control as is possible or desirable over their own work. I know that Creative Commons is developing a tool called CC Signals. That the idea of it is like a CC license, you can't pick and choose who can exercise the rights. They're universal for anyone who can meet the terms. So you can't say I don't like this organization, so not for you. It's sort of equally distributed, but they are creating a tool that flags content as like I want this to, or I'm okay with this being scraped, or I'm not okay with this being scraped. The challenge is that, as I understand it, is that it's not obligatory. And I don't know that Anthropic or OpenAI and their peers necessarily care. Like, are they going to choose to honor a request when the law doesn't mandate that they must? I am skeptical of that, but I know that's like an effort by CC to try to deal with it.
Yes. No, you always ask me when you get
But
in the back in the dark and you have to take a couple of steps out so everyone
I
can see what you're wearing.
think we got we have an
Jeff, you're
I
you're
did,
you're
yeah,
unmuted.
but you had to step out when you're right by the refrigerator. I can't really tell.
okay, hold on. Let's
Yeah.
find them in the list. Okay, I think it's fixed. Um, okay, I think we have time for one more question. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to send Josh the other questions after the webinar, and then I can send his answers out to everybody after the webinar. So I'd say let's do another question. Okay. Most higher education institutions value business models that prioritize and reward output and metrics as a measure of success. Moving towards a values-driven approach to scholarship and beyond in higher education requires change and often is a slow process. What do you think could speed this transition up, and what strategies might OER practitioners have to advocate better?
Um, yeah, like that's the question, right? So I think it varies from institution to institution. At my institution, the like promotion and tenure policies are set at the departmental level. So there isn't so much that like a university administration can do, or at least they are not eager to do it because they don't want to be seen as imposing or stepping on like faculty rights and autonomy. And what Mike Doherty talks about a little bit in that talk that he gave at KU, which again is linked in the slides, um, is that in his experience, researcher or administrators are often sort of waiting for the faculty to initiate change and are supportive of it. And like that's true, like the Higher Education Leadership Initiative for Open Scholarship, the Helios organization, the participants there are provosts and VPs for research and deans and like that level of folk who are like actively advocating for embracing open practices and supporting openness in both teaching and research. But I think from like uh, no matter where you are in this system, there's an opportunity. But yes, it's slow work. It's challenging. I think this is a eat the elephant sort of situation, like one bite at a time. Um, I like maybe look through some of the resources that were shared, the Tara resource and Doherty's toolkit to sort of like pick something that feels tangible and appropriate to your institution, and either learn about it as a first step or like reach out to a colleague. That example from Iowa State, where a faculty member just found themselves in a position to float a policy change, um, that got it done. And again, the faculty voted unanimously to support that. And I don't know, I got one time in the relative recent past, someone said to me, like, if the faculty could all just get on the same page about this thing. And I was like, the faculty aren't on the same page about very much at all, referring to my library faculty colleagues. There's about 50 of us. Um, it'd be like really like we all agree that we should make more money. We all agree that academic freedom should be protected. But once you get more nitty gritty than that, it gets trickier to find something that we all agree on. So I think it's remarkable that that vote got that level of support, and that built it into their faculty senate level documents, which I think sends a signal down that departments are free to do this. So I think it differs from place to place, but there's lots of examples, and um, I'm on this journey too, right? Like currently, despite KU has been super active in the open access landscape for a long time and brags about it. Like I applied here as a networking strategy because I wanted my future boss to know who I was, but I didn't think I would get a job here. Um, in our library documentation, there's no overt support for or recognition of the value of open access. So like that's a thing that I'm interested. That's why I said start in our own house. I need to do that as well. And this is sort of part of that's why Mike was a speaker here. That's why I chose this topic as for this talk, which Charlene gave me a lot of freedom and flexibility to do. This is all sort of preparation and familiarization for like having that conversation. And so like, I think that that's the approach that I would take is sort of like talk about it, float something. If it stalls, learn from that, pivot, listen to the concerns and adapt to them, and slowly we'll get there. But it is a long, hard road.
And it seems like there is a silver lining to being voluntold.
Sometimes.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for your keynote speech. It was
Thank you.
lovely. And thank you for answering those questions. And I will definitely send you the other two questions that came in. Um, and I will be in touch. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Appreciate all of your work. And yeah, reach out if you have questions for me or would like to chat.